and get inspired, Michiana. We are so excited to have Friday Morning Life Inspired, and our guest today is my oldest. This is my Leslie Bennett. This is my mini-me.
Twins.
Yeah, we get called twins often. So we're so excited to have you. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. It's kind of weird and a little nerve-wracking, but I mean, yeah.
Well, we're glad you're here. So we want to make sure we shout out to Daryl Buchanan. Thank you so much, Daryl, for letting us use your music. We have Jesus every week. And that song features Will Cole, Tish Pittman, Janet Pittman, and Daryl Buchanan. And it's available on darylbuchanan.net, so you can get a copy if you'd like. And don't forget that now we also stream at the same time on YouTube. So if you want to watch us on YouTube or send somebody a link that doesn't have access to Facebook, they can watch it there. And if you're watching for the first time, basically what we talk about is, I tell people, when I'm asking them to be on the couch, why and how do you follow Jesus is kind of what it's about. But we specifically look for a turning point. It's called Life Inspired with a ... in the middle, because people have turning points all through their lives. Some have several, some have one really big one, and we want to talk about how God pivoted you at some point. So you're going to tell us about one particular, or sometimes two turning point moments that you're going to share with us. And life was going on before, ... and then God stepped in and did something, and then now you're walking inspired. So tell us some backstory for the life was going along before your ...
Okay, so I was raised in a Christian household with wonderful parents, including you and Dad, and that was really, really great, but I don't think I've even fully realized how blessed I was to have that even today. I continue to see how much of a blessing that was. But it also was, kind of different, where I didn't have quite the full understanding of, of my sin and how much I needed Jesus, because I was raised in a house where I was taught to do the right thing. And so I was very invested in, even when I went off to college and it was my own decision and it was my own faith, it was like, oh, well, I'm going to go to church, obviously, because that's what I do. I'm a good person. I'm a Christian. Like, I'm supposed to go to church because, it makes Jesus happy, or it makes my parents happy, or even it makes me happy, not because I love God and I wanted to serve him. So my biggest turning point, I would say, in my story is when I was a freshman in college, and I had been there for a few months. I was still living in the dorm, and I was living in a dorm that was right across from Sorority Row. It was an all-girls dorm with 1,000 girls, and it was a fun time.
Not gonna lie.
I lived there for a while because I was an RA, but freshman year it was, oh my. And there was actually I remember telling you about this, obviously, because it was scary at the time, but there was like a threat on a YouTube channel or something on...
like a bomb threat to campus or something.
Well, not so much a bomb as like this guy saying he was going to hurt people that were in Greek life. Oh. And so because the dorm was right across from Sorority Row, most of the people who lived in this dorm of these 1,000 girls were in sororities, including myself. And so it was a little scary. I had a friend who was nervous and wanted to come stay the night in me in my little twin bed, and it was very crowded, but I loved her, and I was like, okay. So we were a little nervous, and the next day, I remember one of my neighbors invited me to go to Campus Crusades sermon, I guess. And I went to that. That's the only one I ever went to. I don't remember much about it. I didn't get involved with it, but I do remember, because it was a little bit of a scary time for people. They were worried about their safety. The preacher said at the end of the service, he said, I don't want anyone leaving this room unless you know for certain where you'll go when you die. And up until that point in my life, any time that I had ever had a doubt about my salvation, I always had this assurance of, well, you've known about Jesus since you were a baby. You prayed that prayer when you were 4. Mm-hmm. And whether or not I really understood it at 4, I don't know, but I thought up until that point, I was like, oh, I pushed those doubts down. Don't worry about that. You're saved, you're fine. But I hadn't really been living for Jesus. I hadn't been doing anything that society would consider as a terrible sin. All sin is equal in the eyes of God, and so it's all separating us from him no matter what it is, if it's just, selfishness or jealousy compared to,
murder or something.
Yeah. It's still all bad though. And so I didn't understand the weight of my sin. I didn't really, I guess, realize how much I needed him. And I would just push those doubts down and reassure myself that I was a good person, which is not what saves you. And
Right.
so it was that sermon that pushed me, and it wasn't like a that moment thing, but it turned my wheels, and for at least a week, I started thinking, why am I looking for a church? Like, why am I going? Why am I wanting to get involved? Is it just because I want friends? Or do I really want to serve Jesus? And I think at that point I was already going to the church that I ended up getting involved with all through college. But I do remember that being a big turning point where I decided that I was not going to just go because it was the good thing to do and I was a good person, but because I actually wanted to serve Jesus, because I loved him, because he gave his life for me. So that was my biggest turning point. And that's been a continual thing to have to learn. Like, you have to learn to surrender yourself and your dreams and your hopes and your life and everything to him constantly. Like, it's a constant, I guess, mental battle with yourself and what you want versus what Jesus is like. This is what's going to happen,
right?
Yeah. So that's.
But I have something so much better. I know you want. I know you want that little bitty teddy bear, but I have a big teddy bear to give you.
Yeah.
Right?
So, and that's something that I've continually had to, daily lay down my cross of what I want and put that aside. And some days I don't do a great job of it, and other days, I'm better about it. But it's been something I've constantly been having to learn. And that's another big turning point that I had was 2 summers ago, I was working at a Christian summer camp in Texas. Shout out to Sky Ranch.
Yay!
Was wonderful. And I met a lot of great people, but it was just me going in. And my boyfriend's brother was there at the time, so I knew one person. But, I mean, he was a guy in his cabin, and I had to make friends with the girls, and I didn't know anybody. And it was very nerve-wracking, and we had to go in.
Because you're an introvert.
I am an introvert.
And making friends is not your...
Well,
it's not like you can't make friends, but it's not brave to go out.
It's not something that I was always good at. So that was, it was good for me to have to push out and get out of my comfort zone and meet people. But it was also, it was a very spiritual 2 weeks of training. And we had to, when we were assigned our cabins and who we were going to be working with for the whole summer, we moved into those cabins and we started sharing our testimonies with each other. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, I don't know all these people. And I was going through some stuff spiritually and like trying to surrender some things to Jesus, but like not really wanting to. And going through that when I didn't have my cell phone to call people very much.
Right.
And I didn't have my friends around me already. Like, I built really strong friendships, but I'd been there a week and a half, maybe, at that point. And so I didn't know anybody, and that was really scary. And I remember having to just put aside whether or not people were going to like me based on my testimony, what I was going through, or whatever leadership qualities I had, because I was supposed to be, like, the senior counselor in this cabin, and I was like, I've never been here before. And it was really nerve-wracking to have to just open up to these girls that I didn't know very well. And so I remember when I did share my testimony, it was really hard because I shared what I felt like I was supposed to share, and I kind of kept going, and then it kind of turned into like this mess, and I was like, I thought about what your testimony was supposed to be, like you do on here, where it's before you meet God, and then you meet God because he came in and did something, and then afterwards. And I was like, well, it's supposed to be better, and I'm supposed to talk about how good God is, and like how now it's better with God. And I knew my life was better with God, but I was like, I couldn't find that positive. I was like still, and one of the girls said, she's like, Leslie, it's okay, like this is part of your testimony that you're still going through. And I was like, wow, okay, yeah, it is. And that was really helpful because literally last Sunday, I was coming home from a young adult worship service that night with two of my close friends, and one of them was telling me how she was having trouble surrendering her love life to God. And that's what I had been going through during this summer, that my friend told me, it's okay, this is just what you're still going through. And I learned in that to, surrender that to Jesus, even if I didn't want to, because that was what I had been going through. Was I love this guy, I think he's great, but I'm going through all the spiritual stuff, and I might be hearing that you want me to dump him? Why?
Why would you want me to dump this wonderful young man?
He loves Jesus, he's a great leader, and all this. And I was like, why? And I had to actually surrender that. And I think that's why he made me think I was supposed to dump him, is so that he knew and I knew that I actually would say yes, and it actually was me surrendering. And he gave him right back to me. Yeah. And that was great. But I didn't think that at the time. And so that's what I was going through. And she is kind of in the same place with her relationship as I am with mine, and it's great. But she mentioned that she was like, oh my gosh, I realized I have to surrender this to God. And I was like, yes. And I was able to share that part of my story. And I was like, this is so great. Like, that's the first time I've been able to share that part of my testimony. Like, I feel like it has a resolution now. And I'm a writer. I'm a storyteller. Like, I love stories, and it's kind of hard when they're not complete. So that being kind of complete felt really good for me. And so It was really good to hear how God worked that through in my life, so that I was able to share it with somebody else.
Right.
So hopefully I can be sharing something today with somebody that helps you.
So if they're still in the middle, if you're still in the middle of a story and you don't know how it ends,
God's working through it, even if you don't know how.
Yeah, you can trust him. He's so trustworthy.
Yeah.
I'm glad you said that. I am going to get choked up. We have a lot of friends and loved ones who watch this show, and I'm going to ask you to pray for my friend Lisa. So my friend Lisa lost her husband last Saturday, and so she needs your prayers, and her daughters need your prayers. And we're so grateful to know that he's with Jesus, and he's got his royal reward. Well done, good and faithful servant. So we're so grateful for him. But they have to go through that. But their story's not over. As they go through this painful time, it's going to be a blessing to somebody in the future. And so they're just in the valley right now, and there's a mountain on the other side that they'll get to climb. And so I didn't know I was going to say that today, but so thank you guys for those of you that'll pray for our friends. So anyway, so lots of weddings. Leslie's in town for 2 weddings, a family wedding and a neighbor wedding. Yeah. And so I have friends expecting babies any minute, like due yesterday and stuff like that. Yeah, Lauren's babies do.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So lots of prayers for lots of people. Thank you guys for watching. Oh, I didn't get to ask you this. I always like to know, how do you stay connected? How do you stay inspired? What do you do? Because how you connect might be different than how I connect, might be different how some of our watchers connect. And so I always ask the guest, because everybody's different. So what do you do? How do you stay inspired daily?
I try to have every weekday, at least. I'm not always great about it on the weekends, but when I have a routine and it's a weekday, I'm able to kind of stay with it. I always try to have my time with Jesus, my quiet time, the very first thing in the morning. So
And what does time with Jesus look like? What is your quiet time?
Well, it's part of my wake-up routine, so it's the first thing that I do every day. And some days more than others, I'm a little more awake. I'm a little more meditative and actually thinking about what he's telling me, and other days I'm a little groggy, but I try to do that every day, where I spend some time listening to, I have this little app called Abide, and it does like a 2 or 3 minute little meditation, and that's like my first alarm goes off, and I click that, and I click play so that I have something kind of waking me up, but I can keep my eyes closed, but it's talking about God, and so like, that's helpful.
Sets your tone for the day. That's awesome.
Yeah, but then I get up and I stretch so I can wake up and things like that. But I spend time reading his word, and the way that I am going through that now is just 1 chapter a day, and I go through 1 book at a time, and I go back and forth the Old and New Testament because both are very important. And actually just finished 1 Corinthians, and I need to pick something new, so I'm going to go back to the Old Testament. But that's just in my personal time. I do that, and then I prayer journal. But my biggest thing with being connected to God is being connected to others who are connected to God. So
That's awesome.
when I moved from Tuscaloosa to Birmingham for my job almost a year ago, that's so weird.
Crazy.
I wanted to look for a church, and so I church hop a little bit. And I finally got to get plugged in with Hunter Street Baptist Church.
Go, shout out to Hunter Street Baptist
Yes,
Church,
where
Birmingham.
yes, my aunt goes, and my great uncle and great aunt go.
And cousins.
Yes, and so that was cool to get connected there. But having that community of other believers that I can have fun with and just hang out,
Right.
and talk about literally nothing and laugh, but also be very vulnerable with and very honest about struggles that I'm going through. And then they're like, I've done the same thing. I'm struggling with that too. And working through that together, it's an encouragement that I can do this too. They want me to do this strong and run this race well. And that has been the biggest thing for me. So if
Right.
you don't have a community of believers, I strongly encourage you to find a church that is of sound doctrine and has people that actually want to spend time with you. And if you're in a church and you're in a group, especially for my age group where we're not in college anymore, but we're not married yet, that's kind of like a forgotten slot that people don't always cater to. And it's those people that really, really need community, especially if they've just moved to the area. So if you're already in a church and you're in that age group or not,
Look for
whatever
people.
age group you're in, really be welcoming to other people, because everybody needs a friend who
Awesome.
loves Jesus.
Awesome. Very cool. Thank you for sharing. Facebook, thank you for watching. I would tell you that Leslie would have coffee with you anytime you ask.
Yeah.
But all of you that are in Birmingham area or maybe even Tuscaloosa,
Yes.
it's going to be a little easier because she's only here for the weekend
Yeah.
right now in our immediate area. But if you're watching from Birmingham, Tuscaloosa, you can message us here. We'll put you in contact with Leslie, or you could just Facebook her directly. And,
Or just text me.
Or text you if
I
you
can
know her
get on the
number.
phone.
Yep. So thanks for watching. If you know somebody else that needs to be on the red couch and share their story, we'd love to have that too. So thanks for watching. You guys have a wonderful Memorial Day weekend and have a great day.
Yes, yes, we have. We have Jesus. From a spirit in heaven. We